Hi everybody, this is Beth for Mission Lace. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks for working a lace pattern from a lace chart. So the first thing is we want to understand how our lace chart works. So up here we have the key to our chart, so what each of the symbols in our chart means. When we see a dot, it's a purl stitch. When we see a right slash, it's a knit two together because it creates a right leaning decrease, and a left slash is a slip slip knit because it creates a left leaning decrease. Really nice thing about this particular pattern is that that key is right above your chart, so you have it for constant reference. Our yarn over symbol is a circle because a yarn over creates an eyelet or a circle hole in our pattern, and then the red outline indicates the pattern repeat. So this is a very straightforward lace chart because you can see that red line encapsulates the whole thing, so there aren't any extra stitches on either side. Once you start this lace chart, you're going to be repeating these 8 stitches over and over again. And so each time you finish 8 stitches, you go back to the beginning of the repeat, which is the beginning of the chart, and do those 8 stitches again. And that's going to continue all the way to the end of your round. Because we're working in the round for this T, our lace chart is read from right to left, just like our knitting. So we start with round 1. You can see it's on the right hand side. That's a really good clue that a lace chart gives you to show you which way you should be reading it. So we're reading across like this as we knit. So we're going to purl 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, purl 1, yarn over, slip slip knit 1, then go back and repeat that again. Purl 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, yarn over, slip slip knit 1. And so these 8 stitches form our lace pattern that we're going to repeat around. When we've reached the end of that round, we're going to be on round 2. We go up to where the round 2 is. Again, it's on the right side of the chart because we're working in the round. If this were a piece worked flat, if you're doing one of the other suggested projects for this that's worked flat, that 2 is actually going to be on the left-hand side of the chart because at this point you're going to be working back across your flat piece of knitting, and in that case you would read that chart from left to right, just like going across your knitting. But for the Cascadas T, because it's knit in the round, we're always starting on the right-hand side of the chart, which is why the numbers are always on the right-hand side of the chart. So this is an 8-round repeat. And it's going to tell you in the pattern how many times you do those 8 rounds around. So that's how we're reading the lace chart for this pattern. There's a couple tips and tricks I have to keep track of where you are in the lace work. If this is your first lace project, it's probably not a great idea to watch a super scary or intense movie while you're doing it. You're going to want to pay a little bit of extra attention. I'm going to show you some of my favorite tools for keeping track of where I am. So I have my pattern on this pattern holder from Knitter's Pride. This is the small version. It all folds up and you can throw it in your bag like so. Keeps all of that safe. And then when you're ready to work, it all pops out. So this is one of my favorite tools because it keeps that lace chart right visible for you. So this snaps in there, and then that will all stand up nicely on your table or wherever you're working. It also comes with magnets, so that's how my pattern is held on it. And then this magnet is specifically designed for working charts. So what you can do is go ahead and use that as a guide for where you are. I actually recommend when you're working lace work, you move this above where you are. So if I was working row 1, I would put it into position here. And then as you move it up, the nice thing about that is it lets you reference the row below. So you can see that your lace lines up with what, whereas if it were here, I wouldn't know what had happened on the row below. So you can see in this pattern, for example, there's always these purl columns of stitches that line up, and by being able to see below, I know that when I'm on round 2, when I get to these purl stitches, I should be purling on top of a purl stitch. So if I'm not, something has gone wrong, and that's a really quick way I can check where I am. Then as you work this chart, you can go ahead and just move this bar up. It's magnetic as well, and you can see how your pattern is going to unfold. This is a really great way to just visually remind you where you are. If you're not using this type of pattern holder, no big deal. We also have some highlighter tape, or you can use a Post-it note. The nice thing about the highlighter tape is, again, it lets you see underneath where you are. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this one down. So I can put this highlighter tape, again, if I'm on row 3, I can put it right there. But then I can still see what's coming up or what's there, so it's not totally blocked out, so I have more information to help me there. The highlighter tape is really great. It's super easy to just peel it off and move it up as you move along your project. So now you're in row 4. And if you want a little bit of extra guidance, you can even use 2 pieces so that you're really only focused on, for example, row 4 right there. And these move around. Really easy to use, inexpensive. You get a lot of use out of them. So these are a really great way as well to keep track in your charts of what you're doing. And yeah. The other thing that I recommend doing is keeping a row counter handy. As you can see, this is an 8-row repeat, so I just go ahead and have a row counter in my project bag, and then that way each time I finish a row, I'm going to go ahead and click up so that when I pick this up maybe a couple days later, I don't have to remember where I was. I can go ahead and check and say, oh, I finished row 3, so I'm working on row 4. I like this particular one because it has a locking feature where then the numbers won't move. So that way when you throw it in your bag and it's bouncing around in there, you don't suddenly end up on row 26 when you were previously on row 3. So I definitely recommend using a row counter. If you're not using a row counter, you can also use little tick marks on a piece of paper. I just like this because it's nice and clear, and it's really satisfying to do that click click at the end of a finished row. It's sort of part of the sense of accomplishment. And then my last trick for working with lace patterns, so this is an 8-stitch repeat we can see from the chart, is I just go ahead and mark off each 8-stitch repeat. So each time I'm doing a repeat, I put a stitch marker between them. So you can imagine there's a lot of stitch markers around my project. That's okay. I'm using the Coconut stitch markers. They come in a package of 60, so I have plenty. But this is a really easy way to catch if you get off by 1 stitch, because there should always be 8 stitches between there. And I know each time I'm getting back to the beginning of the repeat, I'm starting with that purl stitch, and then I'm going through my pattern. And so if I've come to the end of the chart here, but I'm still 2 or 3 stitches away from my stitch marker, I know something has gone wrong really quickly before I get all the way to the end of the round. So I recommend going through your project and putting in these stitch markers every 8 stitches or every repeat of the lace pattern. And it's a really easy way to keep track of where you are as you're going through. So those are some of my favorite tips and tricks for keeping track of your pattern and when you're working from a lace chart. Thanks!